All right, welcome. And now this time we're going to be reading about the Northern Colonies, also known as New England. This is a geographic and economic area. When it comes to geography, the geography of the North consisted of mountains thick with trees, rivers, poor rocky soil that was difficult to farm and was unsuitable for crops. So this is a place that is very difficult to live if you're just coming there and you don't have any kind of industry there to support you. It does have some natural resources. Farming was difficult for crops like wheat because of the poor soil, but corn, pumpkins, rye, squash, and beans were raised. That would they were used to being in England growing crops like wheat. They came to New England and did not know how to do that, but instances like the Pilgrims learned from the Native Americans how to raise corn, pumpkin, rye, squash, beans, things that naturally grew there. As for religion, out of the three regions of the 13 colonies, the northern colonies, the New England colonies, were the most tied to religion. Initially, there was no religious freedom at all in the North colonies because the Puritans would not tolerate any other form of religion. The Puritans originally left England. The Pilgrims, the Puritans, originally left England because they wanted the freedom to practice their religion how they wanted to practice it. And they came to New England and populated it. However, they would not tolerate other religions practicing their style. They were for religious freedom, but only their own. As far as climate goes, in the New England colonies, it had mild, short summers and long, cold winters. But because of that, there was less disease than the warm southern colonies. Disease, viruses, germs, they spread a lot easier in warm, wet climates. So up in the north where it was cold, not so much. Trade and exports, fish, whale, ships, timber, furs, maple syrup, copper, livestock, horse, rum, whiskey, and beer would have been the primary ways that they made their livings. Trade and exports was very big in New England because they couldn't farm, versus in, say, the middle colonies where everything was about farming. The northern colonies was all about industry. We're going to take natural resources and we're going to produce things. For instance, they would get molasses made in the Caribbean, in the West Indies. This molasses was produced from sugarcane, and it was mostly produced by slave labor because originally most slaves were taken to the West Indies, and that molasses would be shipped to New England where they would distill it and make rum. So all those pirates you've been listening to stories, all those pirate stories were all about drinking rum. It was all coming from the north. It was basically produced on the backs of slaves. All right. The actual colonies themselves, we have the Massachusetts colony, founded in 1630. It was a charter government, so it had permission from the king to run it themselves, set up their own government. It was a Puritan colony, and its primary shipbuilding was its primary economic activity would be shipbuilding and rum. Famous people would be John Winthrop. In 1636, Rhode Island was created. This was also a charter government and was big on religious freedom. They would be a little bit more open to other religions besides just Puritans. Their trade economic activity was mostly shipbuilding and also rum. Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson would be two of their most famous people. 1636, same year, Connecticut is founded, and it was also a charter. Its religion was primarily Puritan. Once again, shipbuilding and rum. Thomas Hooker would be their most famous person. In 1638, the New Hampshire colony would be the last of the four New England colonies. It was a royal colony, so it was directly under the control of the king. It was Puritan mostly for its religion, and its primary trade economic activity would be shipbuilding and rum. Most famous person, from colonial times, would be John Mason. The big thing you need to remember would be that religion was the driving force behind the creation of the New England colonies. Religion was the driving force. They wanted religious freedom, but not necessarily religious tolerance. One interesting thing is that Vermont, if you look in the map at the top right of the screen, that Vermont is located in New England, but was not a thing yet. Vermont was not its own colony. It was claimed. New York and the Middle colonies, they said they owned it, and New Hampshire and the New England colonies, they said they owned it. So, north, you have religious freedom, but not tolerance, and its society was mostly egalitarian, meaning that it was clergy dominant. Clergy are the leaders of the church. So New England was mostly just day-to-day life. The people who had the most influence would have been the clergy. It was egalitarian, which is very different from the South, which would have been hierarchical, which would be the more land you own, the more slaves you own, the more power and authority you would have. And the Middle colonies was different. The Middle colonies was all about religious tolerance, about freedom to do what you want, but definitely not perfect. It had aspects that were egalitarian and hierarchical. Very interesting. Hopefully this was helpful.